Rural Heritage on RFD TV is brought to you by Rural Heritage Magazine, a bi-monthly magazine featuring articles about farming and logging with draft animal power, small-scale diversified family farming and homesteading, and other aspects of our rich rural heritage. Rural Heritage Magazine, borrowing from yesterday to do the work of today. For subscription information, please call 319-362-3027 or order online at www.ruralheritage.com.
Hello, Rural Heritage.
How are you, Jason?
Good.
We're in Mountain View, Wyoming. We're having our annual American Brabant Association Rendezvous. We're gathering horses, people, general public. We've had some information from, a lot of new information from some people from Germany that was huge. And we're showing our horses, scoring the legs. We're going through all that stuff right here for everybody to see. And it's a learning process for all of us. The horses do quite a little for me. I mean, it's a mixed power thing for sure, but the horses are how I can make it all work. Listen up, boys. Forky, wake up. Forky. Get up, son. Yeah, I ranch. My living is raising cattle, some breeding bulls, some little higher end breeding heifers. I've got tractors. They're old. They still work. They run fine, but they don't get a lot of hours. The horses take up more hours than the tractors. It's economic. I mean, right now you'd better be 400 cows, maybe more. Probably more like 600 to get in the kind of equipment that you can buy now. Used, yes, and I do use cheap used equipment. But the horses let me limit the hours, and the old tractors still run. You know, it's when you get out in the morning. You know, even the cold, frosty mornings. You know, your team's gonna start for one thing, but you know you're out there. It's quiet. You see everything going on, and it is just a whole lot more peaceful. Just makes you feel good. You know, the other thing about working the horses, constant interaction. Doesn't matter what job you're doing. You're talking to them through the lines. You're talking to them. You know, you're watching their ears, their body, everything, and it never stops. It's subconscious sometimes, but it never stops.
Now that I think about it, because when you're out there with a team, you both might react to a quail blowing up or something, and you both see it and you react to it and you hear the birds and all of that. When you're on a tractor, you're kind of in this little cocoon.
You are. You hear nothing but machine noise. You know, and some of our motorized equipment is noisy to a point, yeah, but it's still more quiet than a tractor.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can hear your machinery too, which is a good thing.
You've used all kinds of equine on your ranch.
Yep.
Including mules, all kinds of horses.
Mules, saddle horses, half drafts, you name it.
Didn't matter if they matched.
Nope.
You weren't doing it for cosmetics.
No, some of the, and we saw a few going out in the field yesterday, Palomino half draft, a mule, and a American Brabant filly, you know, but they work good enough together. And a lot of those good horses, they'll kind of match their mates, and they'll check back or speed up a little bit without too much encouragement.
So talk to me about the American Brabant. What do you appreciate about that?
I'll tell you what I appreciate. First thing is temperament. You know, they're laid back horses, but they're smart and they're willing. They get in a collar. When they know they got to get into that load, they just do it. You don't have to ask a whole lot of them to do it, and then they throttle right back down. And so temperament, disposition, whatever you want to call it, top notch, and then the size, and our breed requirements. Try and keep them in that size range. And you know, I'm not a tall guy, but I've harnessed 19-hand horses. I don't like doing it. But it can be done. But these horses are really moderate in size. They're easy fleshing horses, and people take that for granted in a lot of places. Up here at 7,000, 7,200 foot, winter's long. Your forage is pretty limited. And those horses work on grass hay and a hat full of oats, and they look good doing it. And, and they last. They just, they got a lot of bottom. They are smart. And that laid back horse, that doesn't always translate to a smart horse, but that stud we worked this morning, he picked things up, and we just went next step, next step, next step. And I seldom had to backtrack and repeat a whole lot. And he just went right basically to work through all the steps. Philly's the same way.
One of the things I was talking to you about yesterday, which I'm not able to use because of the wind, was that team you had on that Jayhawk. That was their second or third time doing it?
Second, yeah. We tried to have that stack ready. We had to fix a few minor things, and so we didn't get to really do much test run. I finally got it raised lower and reset, and we pushed one load in and dumped it. And then we went to work, and it was pretty crude. Some of it was Teamster. Getting that big swing on that rear end is longer than my buck rakes.
Right.
So I misjudged.
Right.
But,
well, you got to learn.
but the horses went to it. That basket raising, I was really concerned with that, and we did that several times just at dark. And they looked at it, watched it come down. Okay, and we just a little higher, a little higher, a little higher, back down. We were fine, and they didn't worry about it. It's not. It's hard, and they're relatively green at that, but they take they're quick learners, and some athleticism involved in that too. And a real heavy, stodgy horse, that's a difficult maneuver, and they'll get fast on it. When I put that horse on a buck rake, he was speedy. He picked it up, and we can make turns. Part of the problem I figured towards the end. He was throwing a fit, and I thought it was resistance backing. Okay. And it was not. What it was he was wanting to turn. He was wanting to make the turn before we backed more. He was looking to go out and make that circle. And so we had, when I got unhooked, I just backed him, and he collected right back up and backed into my hand. It was not the back, and I backed him on a load again, not backing. It was, and he was getting tired.
And he was anticipating.
He was anticipating turning right, to get to it. Make that circle, and pick hay.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty cool.
If you enjoy seeing how our ancestors lived during America's rule yesterday, you're going to love looking at these books. Volume 1 is fieldwork showing horses and vintage tractors preparing seed beds, planting, cultivating, and harvesting the crop. Volume 2 shows the work being done in the barn and farmyard, feeding and watering the livestock, getting the crop into the barn, milking the cows, shearing the sheep, and collecting the eggs. In Volume 3, we go inside the home to see the family in the kitchen canning vegetables, in the parlor listening to the radio, and in the dining room for family supper. We also head into town to shop at the general store or visit on the town square on Saturday night. Each book has over 140 large format pages. They sell for $24.95 each, or you can buy 2 for $44.95, or all 3 for $54.95 plus shipping. Call 1-877-647-2452 to order. That's 1-877-647-2452.
We plug them in everywhere we can. It was kind of an economic deal at first. And it started out at first, it was a guy kind of ridiculed me for rebuilding an old John Deere Big 4 mower, and I would really just want to rebuild it. It was my grandpa's on his ranch, and he made some remarks about it, so I went and mowed next to his place, and I thought, man, this really is kind of viable, and so I kept doing it, and then I broke down, wore out more equipment, and economically, I had horses and mules, and I worked a lot of saddle horses and some saddle mules, and I had a draft team, and I just started plugging them in and working them, and it just snowballed, and it works. Even and mine's a small scale for out there, maybe on a little smaller edge, and I'm kind of at the edge of with the motorized mowers. I had to look hard at that, and I do catch some grief over that, but it does keep my teams in the field, and it's still efficient.
You catch grief from purists who say you shouldn't put a mower on your.
No engines.
Yeah, right.
And
Okay.
and you know and a ground driven deal on 400 acres of grass hay, give or take some years more, some less. That's a challenge, and to get it put up in a halfway timely fashion with ground drive. You need more horses and mules than I want to pasture. So it changed the amount that I can do, but it keeps me working them horses and mules and keeps my tractors parked.
Yeah, right.
The old wore out things that I've got that I can afford.
Right.
Well, you're in a challenge a lot of ways. I mean, the markets and everything like that, but overhead. And a guy my size, it doesn't happen a lot anymore. These little outfits where you're not requiring an outside job. I'm right there. So keeping my overhead down is a big deal, and they help me do that. And you turn over a team, a seasoned, good team with still some life left in them, that puts money back in your ranch. And equipment payments are the opposite.
Right.
You know, I mean, you can talk about the lifestyle and independence and things like that, but for me, probably a bigger thing, heritage and
your kids.
and my kids. You know, I get to spend more time with my kids, and sometimes I think they're probably going to say more than they want, but you got influence with your kids. You've got time invested in those kids.
Right.
You're teaching them things and it's an advantage we have to teach our kids work ethic.
Right.
And ethics, period.
Right.
You know, and the way things work, your livestock is raised to consume. Yeah, we treat them as good as we can. Our horses are a tool, yes. We treat them as good as we can. They're your partners too. There's a lot of lessons there that people don't get, and I think it shows in society all over. Taking care of what you got, and by that I mean it's lighter on my land. I see that with when we did go bigger, had more tractors and everything. All my river crossings, all my ditch banks, my things like that. It took a toll on them and beats them down. The horse and the sleigh, or the horse and the wagon, horses and wagons, mules, so much easier. And I think too, you know, like you say, you know, putting that manure back on, it seems like a small thing, but it's real. You're not just taking, you're putting it back.
Right. Yep.
Yep. There's a lot of pluses to it.
Yeah. So tell me about this picture. What are they doing in this picture?
Moving loose haystacks.
How would they do that?
How? Well, you get the picture up. There's a sweep head that they drug in front of the stack, and they put a timber behind the stack. Okay, there's a cable runs from this team to the timber and up to the sweep with a pulley on the timber. The same way with the second team. The first team drug their cable. The other team had to step over it. Those stacks would weigh from 6 to 10 ton. If they were bigger than 10 ton, they couldn't always move them.
Wow.
And the other side was the same way. This is my dad right here. Took 4 guys to...
And this is your dad right here?
Yes.
And then...
If you look at that same hat.
Yep, I do. I see it.
One of those guys is my cousin, or my uncle. He quit school at 14. This is a ranch owned by Chris Abbott.
Okay.
They had 7 ranches, and Dad was assigned to move these haystacks on 4 of those ranches. So he put together all the harness they could spare from that ranch, 12 head of draft horses and two saddle horses. And a cousin went and drove the draft horses. Dad drove a team on a wagon with the harness. I just imagine that wagon was full of harness.
Yeah, right. A pile of harness.
When you got enough for 12 horses, you got something.
So your dad had his own ranch as well?
No.
He worked for Abbott?
He worked for Abbott.
Yeah, okay.
Abbott had 7 ranches at the time.
Wow.
And they were scattered all through the sandhills.
Okay.
Dad worked on the, it's called the Churn Ranch. And there was 2 ranches right side by side, the Churn and the Fairbanks. When I was a freshman in college, I worked at the Churn, and my wife and I got married that summer and lived at the Fairbanks. It was 4 miles from the Churn.
Your dad probably told you a lot of stories growing up.
Oh yeah. Well, he graduated from high school when he was 18 and went right to work for Abbott. Worked for him until he went in service in 41.
Okay.
Was in the South Pacific for 4 years.
Wow. Army?
Army.
Yeah.
At one time, there was 250 guys landed on an island in the South Pacific. The next morning, there was 25 of them alive.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Dad said, he lost all of his friends.
So he was one of that 25?
He was, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
He said that night the officer wanted him to post a guard. Dad said, I told him, to hell with you. We're going to get a good night's sleep because we're not going to be alive tomorrow anyway.
Right.
So
wow.
we just well enjoy it.
Man.
He said he didn't have much use for the officers because they all come straight from West Point. And he said they didn't know what,
right.
Didn't have a very good grasp of reality.
Right. They needed a sergeant to tell them what was what.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dad said one time they'd been out on maneuvers and didn't have water. They come across an artesian well and the officer wouldn't let them drink it. Dad says, I just held a gun on him. Dad said it'd been nice if they'd been broke to drive.
They're mostly hurting them?
The savior, he said, was as if one team got to acting up, he said, just let the other guys know. And he said, you just hold your team and you dump 10 ton on 8 horses. And he says, this is a problem solved.
They learned to take it seriously. They learned that they got to save their energy.
They would, those horses that were sedaminium, they'd just take the harness off and drop it wherever the horses were. And the next day they'd wrangle them in a rope corral and catch one, take it out, put the harness on him and hope he'd stay right there in position. Go get another until you had all 32 of them done. They had one extra guy with a tractor and an extra guy that helped them harness and stuff.
That's a lot of work.
It would be.
Yeah. Next week, we'll bring you part 2 of the 2022 American Brabant Horse Association Rendezvous. We'll hear from some German horse registry officials who will examine a few of the American Brabants and judge them on their conformation, willingness to work, and general disposition. Be sure to come back next week. Hi, I'm Joe Mishka of Rural Heritage Magazine. I'm on location of one of the many events we cover that celebrates our rural heritage. If you enjoy our show, check out our magazine, where you'll learn more about the people that blend the past with what works today. You can save almost 20% off the newsstand price by subscribing at ruralheritage.com or chat with us at 877-647-2452. That's toll-free, 877-647-2452. This program is available for purchase. To order your copy, please call 319-362-3027 or visit www.ruralheritage.com. Rural Heritage is a bi-monthly magazine dedicated to draft animal farming and logging, as well as other aspects of our rich rural heritage. It is published by Mishka Press, which also offers a complete line of back-to-the-land books, DVDs, and calendars. Call or write for a catalog or subscription information, or visit our website at www.ruralheritage.com.